All right, well, why don't we get started? My name is Michael Swack. I'm the director of the Master's Program in Community Development and joined today by my colleague, Robin Husslage, who will be following along and letting me know if there are questions. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat, as Robin noted here, and I'll answer questions as we move along. And we're also really lucky today to be joined by Brandon Jones, who's a graduate of the program and living and working in Texas, working as a senior CRA officer. I don't have your exact title, but I'll get it, Brandon, for a bank in Dallas. And he'll be joining us at the end to talk a little bit about his experience as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the Carsey School first. The Carsey School has a number of academic programs, research centers, outreach programs. The academic programs include a master's program in community development, which I'll be talking about today, and also Masters of Public Administration, Masters in Public Policy, and our newest program, Masters of Global Conflict and Human Security, which just became part of Carsey this past year. The Masters in Community Development is an online program. It used to be a program that had a brief summer session, but in COVID, we turned to it all online and are staying with all online. It's worked pretty well because we still use the basic cohort model. What I mean by the cohort model is you pretty much start and go through the required courses and end with the same group of people. So you get to know them, you see them in classes, you work on assignments with them. And we believe it's a really good model of education, particularly for adult education. It allows you to build relationships, professional relationships, friendships that continue well beyond the program. And we believe that it enhances the learning experience as you study with, get to know a group of people and work with them over time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the cohort model and our capstone courses, our curriculum. And let me start by talking a little bit about the curriculum. The curriculum, we have a set of 5 core courses that you see listed there. The Integrative Approaches to Development, I co-teach with my colleague Lee Farrow, and that's essentially an introduction to community development and thinking about strategy and thinking about theory. What we ask students to do is think about theory, meaning what works? What are the combination of policies and practices that actually lead to community development in which the quality of life is improved in the community? A lot of times people say, well, we're not going back to school to learn theory. We're learning how to do this stuff. But one of the things we really push in this opening course is what we found is the most effective practitioners actually have theories. They might not call them theories. They might say, here's a set of assumptions we have about what works and what doesn't work when you do community development. And so we look at the different models and discuss those models and look at people's experience and try and ask the question, what does work? What is your theory? What are the things as you do projects in community development that you want to make sure that you do to enhance the probability of success? So that's really the only theory course in the program, but it will frame the project learning that you do. Other core courses are in public policy, economic analysis, and organizational management and financial management, all which we think are practical courses for practitioners. The core of the program is this experiential learning, which I'll go into more detail in a minute. But it's divided into the intro to projects, project design, project implementation, and finally project evaluation. And then there's a series of electives you can choose from, an increasing number of electives. I've just listed a few there, but there are a number of them. You would select 3 electives over the course of your program. Talking a little bit more about this capstone project, because it is the core of the program. This is a project that you pick on your own. A lot of people ask, do I have to have a project before I start the program? And the answer is, No, most people, in fact, don't have a project before they start the program. They may have an idea of what they'd like to do, but most people do projects in their home community and often in their own workplace. That is, they'll come up with an idea of, what if we were to try a new loan product, for example, or what if we were to develop an outreach program in public health? There's a whole range of programs, and community development defined broadly includes housing, small business, health, community services that are provided by the community. There's a whole range of experience that people come to the program with. So you start with the intro course, and this is where it ties into the theory course. We start with, what's your theory of change? Because your theory of change drives how you think about designing a project. So as you develop your project, you'll learn about how to collect data. So there's information about surveys, interviews, focus groups. I'll be asking Brandon about his project, and he can talk about this in more detail. But what you have is a sequence of courses that are outlined through a basic format we use called the logic model. You may be familiar with it already, which it starts with working backwards. You're saying, what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? And outcomes we define as, what are those things that make people's lives better? That's what an outcome is. A good outcome is when somebody's life is better off. And you work to develop a format in this logic model in which you have inputs, activities, which result in outputs, and ultimately in outcomes. So this is the course Project Implementation and Monitoring, where you essentially develop what your project will look like. What are the steps that you'll take? What are the expectations you have for how each of those steps will lead to outputs and outcomes that will lead to a successful project? Finally, the project evaluation is where you look at the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. One of the questions that often comes up is, does my whole project fit in the program? I mean, does it have to have a neat beginning, middle, and end exactly when the program ends? And of course, you can tell by the way I'm saying it that, unfortunately, life doesn't happen that way. We know that you can't do it. And so you're carrying out a project where you'll go through some, but probably not all, but still carry out, for example, an evaluation format. You'll be developing a format for when the program is going and you begin to evaluate the program. You'll have a structure already for developing data and how you would draw conclusions about the outcomes. It's important to say that outcomes of projects, you may not know for a generation. I mean, in some projects, you may not know if your project is successful for a really long time, because sometimes it takes a long time. I mean, think of early childhood education, for example. You're saying early childhood intervention leads to good outcomes, but you may not know those good outcomes until 20 years later or even more. So again, the idea of the project is to develop the format, begin work on it, and outline those components of the project that comprise the entire project. Let me stop for a minute, Robin, and see if there are any questions that people have.
Hi, Michael. Let me check here. Yes, we have a couple. One is for the capstone project. Can I do mine outside of my organization?
Yeah, you do, and people do. Sometimes people are looking to do something outside their organization because they're looking at it as a way of developing skills and experience in an area or field that they want to move into. Or they may not have, their workplace may not have the type of project that's really what they want to learn more about and improve on. So yeah, again, pretty wide range of experiences.
Great. The other question is, how many students are usually in a cohort?
Yeah, it varies. We've had, I think, as few as around 10, and generally low 20s are about as large. So I'd say in the average over the years, probably about 15 or so. So the cohorts are relatively small.
Thanks, Michael. Those are all the questions I see for now.
Okay. One other point that I forgot to mention is in taking the courses, that the courses are primarily asynchronous, meaning you do the work on your own. You may arrange meeting times as a study group that you'll do via Zoom with people in your program. And most of the courses do have face-to-face meetings via Zoom, either once a week or once every other week. And these sessions are 60 to 90 minutes. So as a practical matter, what it means is 1 or 2 days a week, generally in the early evening, if we're talking about Eastern time. I think, Brandon, you were in Central time the whole time, so it was like probably dinner time is when your classes met. But you can expect 1 or 2 face-to-face via Zoom, that is, meetings per week, in addition to the asynchronous work that you do. The program is a 36 credit program. As I pointed out earlier, 9 are the required or the project, what we call experiential courses, plus the 3 electives. The program is divided into what we call E-terms, which are 8-week terms done online. And you can see a sample program mapped out here. This is really for illustrative purposes more than anything else. Probably the most important thing to say is that as you progress through the program, people take varying amounts of time. So generally, people take 1 or 2 courses at a time. If you do take 2 courses at a time, you can graduate in 14 months. I think I would say typically students take between 14 and 18 months to graduate. It's not infrequent that someone will say, this is more than what I can do in a term by taking 2 courses, so I'm going to drop to 1 course a term. So there's flexibility. There's not a required number of courses you have to take any term, and the courses are offered again within a year each year. So this is a basic chart that outlines the kinds of courses you might take and the sequence that you take. So in the fall, there's an E-term 1 and 2. So from the end of August to mid-October, and then mid-October to December. And you progress through the courses again, typically through a cohort. So if you look at that top line, integrative approaches, organizational management, economic analysis, financial management, policy analysis, generally you'll be with mostly the same people during that time. Occasionally, someone will start before the main cohort starts in the fall, just to try a course and take it. So we've had people take, for example, financial management in advance of starting the program. So they get a head start, get that course out of the way, but then typically join the cohort in the August term after that. The application requirements, as you can see there, bachelor's degree, the transcripts from that, 3 letters of reference, preferably from people who are familiar with your work or from a previous academic recommendation, a personal statement that tells us a little bit about your interest in the program and why you're interested in the program, and your resume and application fee. Do note that GRE is not required. The TOEFL is required for international students if their primary language of study in their bachelor's degree was not English. If it was English, TOEFL is not required. The costs, tuition, you can see on the screen there of what it is for New Hampshire residents, a little bit more for out-of-state residents. We have a financial aid in the form of grants, primarily through UNH. You can also apply for student loans. We also have partnership agreements if you're affiliated with any of these organizations listed here, like NeighborWorks or LISC or OFN. We provide additional awards for those employees. That's a $5,000 scholarship actually, or what we call education awards. It's not limited to that, but it's at the very least that in terms of a Carsey School partial tuition scholarship. Just a little bit about some of the projects and where they've been done, and just a couple profiles of graduates of the program from recently. But rather than just talking about people there, let's talk to Brandon Jones. It's a good picture of you, Brandon.
Thank
you. But you have new glasses.
I know, there's always new frames.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, thanks for agreeing to join us today. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who you are, where you work, how did you find out about the program?
Yeah. So my name is Brandon Q. Jones. I am a regional external affairs manager. It's kind of weird saying that because I recently got a promotion. And so in my role, I lead corporate social responsibility for Texas, Arizona, and Florida. So kind of our southern states at Comerica Bank. That entails investments, both philanthropic and strategic investments into 501c3 nonprofit organizations, as well as our CDC partners, community development corporations, as well as CDFIs, community development financial institutions as well. And so that looks like also it encompasses financial education programming and technical assistance programming for small businesses. And I'm also the special projects lead for the community department as well. So implementing such projects as our mobile unit, which is a mobile branch that we erected in Florida, and more recently, and my capstone project, our small business resource center, business HQ here in Dallas.
Great. It sounds like the promotion involved piling on more work.
Of course.
So,
Always.
Brandon, how did you first hear about the program? I'm curious.
Yeah, I was interested in furthering my career and furthering my my knowledge, and I knew that I wanted it to be in this community development space. I knew that I now had like a passion for it, and I wanted my full career to be this for the rest of my life. And so I said, well, I just started Googling grad schools and reaching out. And when I got to UNH, I don't know, it was just the warmth that I felt from. I talked to Robin first, I believe, and I talked to some more folks on the staff, and I just felt this warmth of like they really wanted me to be there. But then also the curriculum made a whole bunch of sense for my career trajectory and kind of like what I did. And so once I kind of looked at the evaluation of the classes, and how that would further my knowledge in being a community development practitioner, reached out, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit about your project. What was it? Did it tie to your work? What were you able to accomplish?
It does. It's an ongoing project still tie into my work, but it is a small business resource center that is in South Dallas. And so South Dallas is kind of one of those neighborhoods that is disproportionately affected economically and socially and educationally. And there's of course a litany of things that happen in South Dallas. And so as you were alluding to earlier, the logic model, I think my overall problem was understanding why are small businesses not being supported in the southern sector, right? And then from there, kind of drilling down and looking at those outcomes of what I can do to change that behavior, right? And so it looked like as I began to socialize it with the bank, and it was already kind of on the bank's radar to do. And I just kind of stepped up and said, hey, I can go ahead and drive this project because it can also be a project for my master's program. The bank was totally okay with it. And I love that the two intersected or collided, because we would have never done the amount of research that we needed to do to get this project to where it needs to be today without like me understanding the full logic model and going through that whole surveying and the key informant interviews and all of that goodness, right? Holding those focus groups to really understand the overall needs of community and what they needed from a small business resource center. And then so from there, socialize the project both in community as well as internally. Well, in community first. I really got the buy-in of community and sought to understand programming that should go on in this small business resource center, and as well as what they needed in the physical space, right? There are certain things that were just not available in Southern Dallas, like good meeting spaces for small businesses, or we're also in a technological kind of a desert in South Dallas as well. So that looks like access to Wi-Fi for small business owners, and all of that goodness. And so those are things that we had to sit down and really go to the community. And so we went back to our executive committee to kind of pitch it to get internal financing for it. It was an overwhelming yes, right, from our executive committee, because we had done the great amount of research. I think probably some of the best research the bank said they've ever seen in terms of canvassing community and understanding the need. And so we were granted $5 million from our executive committee to erect this project here in Southern Dallas. So it is, we are about 18 months into the project. physically we are done with construction. We've actually just last week did preview tours with all of our strategic community partners that are a part of the project, and kind of let them know that, hey, we're from focus group to here. And they were so excited to see that their input was heard through those, key informant interviews, through those, focus groups, and also through the because we even did surveys all the way down to the physical design. Like, how do you want this to look and feel when you walk in? And so to be able to deliver that to community was quite overwhelming last week to see people come into the physical space. So we're about a few weeks out. We have the permitting bottleneck at this point, but it's almost physically complete. So
Wow,
really
that's
exciting.
great. It's great. So it's a real project in the sense of you actually did it through your workplace, and I mean, in this case, your workplace got great value from your education.
Yeah, a lot of value.
So let me read a question to you from one of the participants, Brandon. It reads, did you feel like you missed any value in doing a master's where you can keep working that is flexible and online versus a more traditional in-person 2-year master's program? Social aspects, quality time with professors, quality of education courses. So
no, I don't think so, because traditionally when I was an undergrad, that's been years ago, right? So it's two different, Brandon versions of Brandon. I thought that I was not going to do okay with just the online, because I knew that I'm a really relational person. I like to talk. But there was never a time where, especially like with the relationship, you really develop relationships with the cohort. So you all are going through it together. So if you miss a class or something's going on, like your cohort will reach out to you and like, hey, where are you? Are you okay? What's going on? We all have each other's numbers. But then also the staff, like the professors, really accessible. Like there was never a time I felt like I couldn't talk to Jolan or anybody, Sanjeev. Like I could just pick up the phone and call, or I could just send an email and get a response quickly. So I don't think there was anything missed. I think it was a lot gained, right? And I do like that it's not in person, because it really opens up the cohort to a variety of folks from all over the world. So I think that if we were like, we had to be there physically doing it, I think that it would be limiting in terms of like the depth and breadth of like folks that will be able to be a part of the cohort. So I thought it was actually pretty beneficial the way it is.
great. Brandon, what was challenging about the program? Like, when you got into it a little bit and had all sorts of work demands, what was challenging, and what strategies did you develop to address those challenges?
Yeah, life happens. So much of life just happened, right? Physical things, things just popped up. But I think the biggest challenge for me was I never got away from work. I never got away from the project, right? And so the project is raging on at work. It's an actual project, right? It's consuming most of my work life, and then kind of getting off of work and then reporting the project. I think it was probably the biggest challenge for me. And then also not scheduling in like time to breathe or time to get away, right? And so I think for me, what I had to do was just be communicative with the professors and kind of say, hey, this is what's going on. And at first I had some trepidation there, because I was like, I don't want them to think I'm slacking. But when I went to, Jalan and Sanjeev, and I was like, hey, like I am very overwhelmed, and so I even took a couple of semesters off just to kind of breathe, and still was working on it at work. Like had not stopped the project and was sending in updates, still kind of saying, hey, this is how we're progressing. As we got press releases out, I would send them over and kind of say, hey, like I'm actually doing the project, right? But to be understood in that way was, probably the most beneficial part of the program for me, because the professors really do understand that life happens, and they allow me to get back on track to finish the program.
Yeah. Brandon, here's another question from one of the participants. How long did it take you to complete the program? And did you follow a map similar to the one that I just presented?
There was a map presented at the beginning. No, I did not follow. Mine is all over the place. So no, like you said earlier. So I think I started with the finance program, the finance class, Robbie's class, just to kind of figure it out, right? And I was like, okay, this program really works. So I kind of started ahead of my cohort, and then took almost a year off, just like working with the program. So like this semester is my first semester back, and I'm on schedule to graduate this fall. So I actually, there's been some time there where I didn't follow the traditional map, the traditional layout there of the schedule. But I think if you can, definitely do push it all the way through. But life happens. So
right. But it sounds like it still worked out for you
Yeah, definitely.
a slightly different path than was mapped out in
Hmm.
the presentations. Good. We're just about at time, but let me check to see if there are any other questions. Robin, is there anything I missed here?
Let me check. No, I don't see any additional questions for you or Brandon at this point. Michael, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you for
That was
having me.
really, really great. And I think answered a lot of questions a lot better than we could. So thanks for joining us today, the participants. I have on the screen here how you can contact us if you don't already have that. It's my email and Robin's, as well as Sanjeev, who coordinates admissions, among other things. Appreciate your joining us today, and hope you follow through. Look forward to getting any questions, and we hope your application.
Don't
Thanks very
hesitate to
much.
reach out.
Okay. Bye now.
Good to see you, Brandon. Bye-bye.